comparatively tame one by many standards, but nonetheless extremely safe and just demonstrating just how little runway. That's followed by the AOP-9 Oster. For more about how that's very much involved in the reconnaissance business. It was all about looking over the hill and getting one over on your enemy. The earliest you could get at recognizing where the enemy were, the advantage over friendly forces. And literally within years of the Orville Wright and his brother getting airborne across in North America, the British Army Century with its balloon flights. And it was the Royal Engineers we have to thank for that. And a certain engineer, Lieutenant Colonel Trapper, happened to befriend a man called Cody. And they had already experimented shortly after the flight of the Cody machine in 1908 with the advance into full-time. Merely a snapshot of aviation history from the Army, featuring very much the mid-50s through to around about the mid-80s, with the Bell 47 at the front. Pretty much all the helicopters have been armed in one way or another. Even this Sioux helicopter in front of you now had a GPMG mounted on the skids there, where generally speaking you would normally have seen a casualty in a stretcher. This aircraft piloted today by Surveys, very similar to all our pilots, an ex-Army Air Corps operational pilot, Rich Billings, currently now engaged with Boeing full-time on testing aircraft, and our chief pilot, demonstrating the maneuverability of this particular machine. The visibility, obviously outstanding, but it was very slow, and also it got very, and you can see very good. Surprisingly, the Army had to look at additional resources, and following that came the Western Scout eventually, and that became the very first attack armed aircraft of British Arctic in northern Canada. But the American Army Air Corps saw its potential as a massive utility aircraft, and it was quickly followed by the British Army as well. We bought 44 of these machines in the early 60s. This particular aircraft is 60 years old this year. Observation and reconnaissance roles, but also on skis and floats as well. It is an incredibly flexible and adaptable machine, but it was loaded with all sorts of additional electronic equipment during the latter days of the 80s in the counter-terrorism role. Continuing forward about a whole range of wonderful Spitfire and Hurricanes during the course of today. But in very many ways, the Oster development was similar. We have recently acquired a Mark I Oster delivered to 651 Squadron in 1942, and that was delivered to the front line with a mere 90 horsepower Cirrus Minor. Well, just as the Spitfire ended up at the end of the war with twice the power, so did the Oster, albeit with a Bristol Bombardier just producing just over 200 horsepower. But it was the essence of what Captain Bertram Dixon in 1910 proved to the leadership of the British government on exercise and Salisbury Bay in those days, that actually what they needed was aircraft in the air to do this job, and not just to identify the enemy, but of course then neutralising them at the same time. And the advance has having taken place, it is quite possible that at the time this year the aviation may not have literally taken off at the time, just a couple of years before the start of the First World War. Bertram Dixon luckily had two observers with him that day, a young Winston Churchill and Lord Kitchener, and they were immediately convinced once Bertram had landed his aircraft. I mean, he, a pioneer, a Royal Artillery man, he nipped across to France to get his pilot's license as soon as possible to convince the powers that be that they needed to invest in this, and thus was born the Royal Flying Corps. It is an extraordinary story and one that will live on in terms of the early development. And quite outstanding it is too. So, as I say, this is just a tiny snapshot. There's just 3 of 8 aircraft that we actually have under various stages of refurbishment at Middle Wallop, and no longer supported by the MOD. The entire rescue took place, these and the other aircraft, in 2013, turning the entire operation into a charitable trust and literally existing off the generosity of people like yourselves here today with public donations. It's been a struggle, but worthwhile, and as I say, certainly to join such history and eminent aircraft and aviation and air crews at Duxford, a real privilege and a pleasure just to bring a few of these aircraft to you here today. Going now by in slow formation here, you see the Beaver back to about 65 knots. It's got a huge flap opportunity there. You can drop up to 58 degrees, a massive barn door flap, braking now for their final manoeuvre in a the story continues, of course, because very soon around these parts of the neighbourhood you will see the E-model Apache. Now one of the weapons on board, it has the radar, can't see everything. It's still doing that very same job that Army aviators set out to do in the first decade of the 20th century, and that is to get an advantage over the enemy, look over the hill, and find a way of neutralising that particular threat. So what they're going to do now, the three of them will just bunch hand over with a wing on the top, an outstanding utility aircraft capable of getting in the most extraordinary nooks and crannies of mountain passes, lakes, even rivers all around the world. Still hugely popular in North America, in Africa and in Australasia as well. And the Oster now a charming collector's item with around 70 plus of these aircraft still flying in UK. Landing together, ladies and gentlemen, the historic Army aircraft flight.
Well, thank you very much indeed, George. A delightful display. The other person, incidentally, I think of when seeing these aircraft, particularly the Oscar, apart from Bertrand Dixon and the other pioneers, is Major Jack Parham of the Royal Artillery.
Yeah, well, the artillery is synonymous right through the whole story, still are today, yes, because they now operate the unmanned aerial systems.
Of course.
And they have command of that as Royal Artillery, but funnily enough, the current Army Air Corps is the controlling authority and airworthiness approval for them. So, still in the same camp,
yes,
operating in a slightly different way, still at the heart of aviation, and remarkably Ben still doing the same job.
Indeed. So Jack Parham, for those who don't know, was a private pilot, in fact, alongside being an artillery officer, who had a little Aeronca bathtub in the 1930s, with which he saw the opportunities, didn't he, for using a light aircraft like that for over-the-horizon artillery spotting.
Yeah. And I assure you guys, when you look at the Mark 1 in particular in our hangar,
yes,
there's absolutely nothing on it.
Yes,
you know,
it's very basic.
These guys deployed to northern France, particularly around D-Day, and they did a sterling job, and I take my hats off to them because today it is just so much easier.
Yeah.
And of course there was no defence. I mean, at least the Spitfires and Hurricanes had some weapons on board,
yes,
to scare the enemy, even if they didn't hit them.
Yes.
But these guys had absolutely nothing. So
and our next one display item going off the hard runway are two